Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County Forum for candidates for Snohomish County Superior Court Judge, Position 12. I'm Karen Crowley, a member of the League. This forum is being live streamed to our League YouTube channel, so to those in the virtual space, thank you for joining us. I'm going to start by providing some background on the position. Superior Court judges serve 4-year terms. Superior courts hear felony criminal cases, civil matters, divorces, juvenile cases, and appeals from lower-level courts. Snohomish Superior Court is a nonpartisan office, and candidates do not state a political party preference. The candidates for Snohomish County Superior Court Position 12 are Whitney Rivera and Mary Anderson. It's the policy of the League to be nonpartisan, and therefore we neither endorse nor oppose candidates or parties. The rules for participation in this forum were sent ahead of time to all candidates, and they've agreed to follow them. I'll pose the questions, and I'll clearly state the amount of time allowed for each answer. And we're using a countdown timer. It's visible to all candidates, and time limits on questions will be strictly enforced. So the order for the first question was determined at random before the forum, and it will be Ms. Anderson and then Ms. Rivera. I will then alternate candidates in the starting position, so let's begin. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to this first question. Ms. Anderson, it starts with you, and that question is, what qualifications and experience make you a strong candidate for this judgeship?
Thank you. So law is my third career. I owned and operated a mortgage brokerage firm, owned and operated a construction firm, and I currently own and operate a law firm. I am a trial attorney. I try cases in both state and federal court. I have argued before our state Supreme Court twice. I also have judicial experience, having presided well over 1,700 cases to include both criminal and civil matters. Additionally, I have attended the National Judicial College. I have a lot of experience in different areas of law to include civil, criminal, family law, construction, the UCC, and so much more. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Ms. Rivera. Same question about your qualifications, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Judge Whitney Rivera. I am Snohomish County Superior Court Judge, currently seated in Position 12. I have been a judge for almost 4 years. Prior to my current seat on the Snohomish County Superior Court, I was the Edmonds Municipal Court Judge. I have been a public servant for my entire 18-year legal career. Prior to becoming a judge, I worked as a public defender. I am honored that my legal work as a judge has been recognized by my colleagues. In 2023, I was selected to be faculty at Washington State Judicial College, teaching sentencing and probation. That is an intensive training for new judges to learn how to become a judge. In 2023, I also received the President's Award from the District Municipal Court Judges Association for my legislative work on behalf of that organization. As part of this election, I've been endorsed by every single one of my colleagues on the Snohomish County Superior Court bench, as well as every sitting judge in Snohomish County and hundreds of judges statewide. Most importantly, every day I take the bench, I see firsthand the way that decisions made in courtrooms have long-lasting and far-reaching impacts on real lives. I take that job incredibly seriously and am passionate about my work and love serving my community in this capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's learn a little more, and Ms. Rivera, we'll start with you this time, 90 seconds again. What is your general judicial philosophy or approach?
So when I put on my robe and step onto the bench, the thing that's most important is that the people in front of me understand that they are being heard. And so I'm really focused on procedural fairness, or what some people call procedural justice. And the way that I can achieve that is by actively listening, demonstrating empathy, and explaining the reasons for my court rulings. And so if an individual understands the transparent reasoning that I'm making a ruling, that regardless of the outcome, that person can leave at least feeling heard. In terms of the analytical approach to my job, being a judge, one of my colleagues says, is like being an umpire and calling balls and strikes. And in a lot of ways it is, in terms of I have to be knowledgeable about the law. I put an incredible amount of time and energy into reviewing the applicable case law, statutes, and briefings of the attorneys prior to ever taking the bench. Because once I'm in that courtroom with those attorneys, that's my opportunity to ask them questions, to point out case law that may contravene their arguments. And so using that time we have in the courtroom as efficiently as possible. And then most importantly, recognizing that these aren't just legal rulings or decisions made in a court, but this can affect where someone's child resides. This can affect whether someone's liberty is taken away. And so approaching each decision that I make with the seriousness that the case requires. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson, same question to you, your general philosophy or approach.
It's really all about doing the right thing, even when no one is looking or watching. As a judge, you have a responsibility and duty to always do the right thing. You're not there to tip the scale one way or another. So my philosophy is I always want to ensure that I am upholding the law and the Constitution. And it doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter your sexuality. It doesn't matter your nationality. What matters is you as a judicial officer, you are upholding the law equally without a biased lens. And one way to do that is to ensure that is to be transparent in your ruling, looking at the case law, applying the facts, and ensuring that the individuals that come before you are seen and heard. So it's all about, for me, transparency, transparency, and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Timer, please note that candidates will have 60 seconds for these next questions, and please adjust the clock. And we're going to stick with you, Ms. Anderson, for this next question. Please tell us, how do you foster a respectful and inclusive courtroom environment for all parties involved?
It's truly all about being a great listener. You have to be able to listen to everyone to ensure that they are being heard. So as a judicial officer, to ensure that everyone's being heard in the courtroom, you need to be a great listener, hear what they're saying, and then repeat what they're actually asking you to ensure that they know that I have heard them. And then once that has been panned out, then answer their question to ensure that I know what they were talking about and they know that I actually heard them and we're communicating back and forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rivera, same question for you.
Well, in terms of an inclusive courtroom, I'm specifically thinking of people who maybe have had difficulty accessing justice or accessing the court system. And in my experience as a judge, I find that a lot of the individuals who are most impacted and excluded are people with limited English proficiency. And so that's not just sort of understanding the court proceedings. By statute, they are provided a court certified interpreter for those proceedings, but also how they get to the courtroom, making sure they know where to go, making sure that we have the correct dialect for them. If it's a language that's not registered through certified through the administrative office of the courts, how do we find someone and how do we know that they're interpreting accurately? And how do we check in with that limited English proficiency user to make sure that they have all the access to the court system that someone who is proficient in English has? So that's something that I care about a lot and that we're constantly trying to improve in our courtrooms in Snohomish County.
Thank you. And we'll stick with you, Ms. Rivera, for the next question. Tell us, what strategies do you employ to ensure your own impartiality and to avoid bias in your decision-making?
That's such an important thing, because if court users feel like they're in front of a judge that's not impartial or that's biased, no matter the outcome, they're not going to feel that it's fair. I volunteer at Everett High School helping to teach an introduction to law class, and they actually had a field trip to my courtroom last week. And we talk about implicit bias a lot. And we showed them the video of what jurors watch about implicit bias, because not only is it so incredibly important that judges don't act on their implicit biases, which we all have, but also that jurors, as the fact finders, are aware of their own as well. So I think it's incredibly important to constantly be a check on yourself, to constantly question your own motivations in the way that you're making rulings. I had the opportunity to attend the National Judicial College How to Have an Anti-Racist Courtroom conference in Montgomery, Alabama last year. And I think especially looking towards our past and the way that the court system has perpetuated inequities is a way to make sure that in our future, we don't exacerbate or continue those policies.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Ms. Anderson, how do you avoid bias in your decision-making?
That is a really great question. And what I do, my philosophy is to always ensure that I am reviewing the case law to ensure that if we have similar facts that come before me, that I'm ruling the same way. Because everyone has biases, no matter who you are, what you represent, we all have these biases. So one way to check it is to check it against case law and how other judges ruled on a particular issue. Another way to check it would be to write your rulings to ensure transparency. You see the theme, transparency, to ensure that everyone knows why you're ruling the way you're ruling, you're applying the facts to the law, and everyone has a good understanding on why you actually rule this way. That's why it's my policy to always write my rulings. And as your next judge in Snohomish County Superior Court, my promise to you is to always write my rulings to ensure that you know why I'm ruling the way I'm ruling. Transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So for the next question, we'll start with you again, Ms. Anderson. Please tell us, how do you stay current with changes in law and legal precedent?
Yes, I love this question because I am a proponent of education, and I always read all the case law that comes out. Every week, case law comes out from our appellate court, the Court of Appeals 1, 2, and 3, and our state Supreme Court. So I read all those rulings to determine whether or not the legislator is going to make a fix on any of these cases that the appellate court has ruled upon. Additionally, at the legislative branch, when they're enacting and creating these laws, we get a summary every year, and I review those summaries to determine what laws have been passed. So that's what I do to stay on top of all the different laws coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rivera, same question for you. How do you stay current?
Yes, you have to read every case that comes out of the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. That's absolutely necessary to be able to stay current and make rulings on the issues that are coming in front of me every single day. In addition, I have previously worked on the legislative committee, so in discussing new laws with the legislature, and was responsible for presenting to my professional organization on the legislative changes that occurred in the 2023 legislative session, and it moves quickly. So it's incredibly important to stay on top of that. That all being said, laws are flying around constantly, and so I also think that it's important that regardless of if you've read every case and every new statute out there, that each time an issue comes before you, that you're going back and revisiting every single case that applies to that particular issue so that it is fresh in your mind when the attorneys are appearing in front of you. There's such a breadth of laws. In the past few months, I've ruled on timber trespass, breach of contract, fraudulent misrepresentation, vehicular homicide, and there are so many laws that apply to each of those that we just need to stay on top of every day.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll stay with you for the next question, which is, what is your approach to cases that involve novel or unsettled areas of law? Ms. Rivera.
Yes. So, there are always going to be new statutes that come before us, but we are given guidance as judicial figures. And so I had a novel area of law come in front of me, and I had to turn to the Constitution to determine whether or not a process had complied with procedural due process and therefore gave someone notice and an opportunity to be heard. And so we're given a framework, even when we're looking at a new law, as to how to approach it. So for example, a new statute that's never been interpreted by the Court of Appeals or Supreme Court. Well, they've given us a roadmap for how to do that. We first determine whether the statute's ambiguous or unambiguous. If it's unambiguous, meaning one interpretation, we follow its plain meaning. If it's ambiguous, we have tools of statutory construction that we apply to come out to what the legislature intended. So we have those tools in place. It's really important to review the attorney's briefing, review all the arguments they're putting forth, and just trying to land on that right answer based on the framework that the appellate courts have given us.
Thank you so much. Ms. Anderson, same question to you. Novel or unsettled areas of law?
It really depends on what issue is before me. But normally, I would look at the Washington State Constitution and the Constitution itself to ensure that I'm not violating anyone's constitutional rights. Because the truth is, we as judges, we have an obligation and a duty to ensure that we're upholding the law and the Constitution of every individual that comes before us. So if there was a new novel or something that has not been settled, I would look to the Constitution. Additionally, I would look to similar cases that have similar issues to determine whether or not if I can harmonize that with the Constitution, and then just go ahead and take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, Ms. Anderson, this goes to you first. Would you please describe your approach to effective communication with attorneys, litigants, and court staff? You are dealing with many different groups of folks. Tell us how you manage those communications.
It all boils down to being able to respect one another and being a great listener to ensure that you're really hearing what the different parties are asking of the court, to ensure that I'm doing my job and helping the attorney that may come before me, the clerk that may be asking me a question, to ensure that everyone is seen and heard in order for us to move the docket forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Rivera, same question for you. Tell us about your effective communication style.
I think I've already discussed communication style with litigants, so I'll focus on the court staff piece of that question. And when I go into court, I am part of a team. I have my law clerk, my court reporter, and my court clerk. And we need to be able to quickly and efficiently communicate to address the emerging issues that happen in a courtroom. My law clerk is a recently barred attorney. For example, we had a jury trial recently where the prospective jury was coming in, and one of the jurors handed her a note that other jurors were talking about something they shouldn't have in the hall. And we all had to quickly adapt to that situation, remove the jurors from the courtroom so that we could discuss the situation with the attorneys, and all do that in a matter of seconds. My court clerk also, I just completed a breach of contract trial with a fraudulent misrepresentation affirmative defense. We had so many exhibits, and the ability, her and I, to be able to communicate with one another while I'm on the bench about those exhibits is incredibly important. So it's really important for effective communication with my
Thank you. Thank you so much. We recognize this 60 seconds is not a very long time to answer, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate your working with that. So next question, Ms. Rivera, if you observed a party in your courtroom being poorly represented by unprepared or ineffective counsel, how would you handle the situation?
So the term ineffective counsel has a constitutional meaning. So in a criminal context, under the Sixth Amendment, a defendant has a right to effective assistance. So deficient performance that prejudices a defendant could result in reversal of a conviction. So in terms of ineffective assistance, that's something we have to be incredibly mindful of. In terms of unprepared counsel, I think we need to also balance the fact that I'm a neutral decision maker. So for example, if an attorney can't get an exhibit admitted, it's not appropriate for me to help them do that, even if I know the way they could get that admitted. But also, we don't want the decisions that are made in our courtrooms to be made based on an attorney's performance. So if I'm aware of case law that applies to the legal issue in front of me, and it's clear to me the attorney's not, I am going to give them an opportunity to review that and make sure I draw their attention to that case law. If an attorney seems unprepared for any reason, I'm going to ask them why they appear to be unprepared and see if it's appropriate to grant a continuance.
Thank you very much. Ms. Anderson, same question for you.
Yes, thank you. This is a difficult position to be presented with, especially as a judicial officer. As a judge, we are to be impartial and neutral, and we are to call balls, balls, and strikes, strikes. And so if in fact there were an attorney that was ineffective or not doing his or her job, I also believe that judges have an ethical duty to actually put on the record in front of this attorney to let he or she know that this is what's transpiring. I would encourage you to go and look at the rules of professional conduct with respect to being an effective counsel for your client. Like I said, this is a very difficult situation to be presented to a judge, but as a judicial officer of a court, you do have an ethical duty to say something as well.
Thank you. Thank you both for those answers. The next question I'm going to ask is very broad, and we recognize that, but we'd love to hear your thoughts in 60 seconds. I'm going to start with Ms. Anderson. Are there obstacles to justice today in our state? Please explain your perspective, and if so, are there remedies you would suggest?
Absolutely. There are a lot of obstacles that prevent people from getting justice. In the civil context, it would be the cost of litigation. If you don't have the resources to pay for an attorney to move your case forward, I don't know necessarily if you could get justice because all the different moving pieces in the law. With respect to a defendant or a plaintiff coming into court, with respect to the jury, this is a real issue. I have found a lot of judges dismissing jurors because they don't have the financial means to actually sit on a jury because they're only paid like $10 a day. And other people that can actually sit on the jury, maybe their employer pays for it. So I would say we would need to go to the legislator and say, hey, if someone makes less than $40,000 a year, let's pay them $100 a day to do their civic duty in order to ensure that we really have a jury of our peers. And that's really important, and that will help with justice.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rivera, same question to you. Again, we recognize it's broad, but we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, in terms of obstacles to justice in civil litigation, not just the cost of litigation, but the ability to even have access to an attorney. And so civil legal aid is something that Washington State is now just starting to fund in certain areas. And we've seen a tremendous impact on in our courts from it, whether it's evictions proceedings, protection orders. This past week, I presided over a legal financial relief day, and we had a number of civil legal aid groups who were present in court representing indigent people who had been imposed legal financial obligations to get them waived based on a change of the law that occurred after they were sentenced. And so I watched person after person walk out of that courtroom free of debt that had been hanging over their head in some cases for more than 20 years. And so the impact that those attorneys had on those people's lives was monumental. And so civil legal aid is something that we continue to hope the legislature will fund because we're seeing it impact outcomes in our courtroom.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll stick with you for the next question. Should the diversity of judges reflect the diversity of the communities they serve? Why or why not?
Yes, judges should absolutely reflect the diversity of the community. I am the only woman of color on the Snohomish County Superior Court bench. I'm only the second woman of color ever to be on this bench in its history. Diversity, not only in race, but also in experience. I have lived experience. I had a family member who went through the court system who was charged with a crime. I know what it's like to sit next to a loved one and wonder what's going to happen to them in a courtroom. So I think that diversity is vitally important. When we look at outcomes in courts and when we looked at lived experiences, it goes back to what I was discussing in terms of demonstrating empathy. And as a former public defender, I represented thousands of clients. I had conversations with them, their family members, their loved ones in jails, in the hallways, in the courtrooms. I stood next to clients on the worst days of their lives. And it's important for me to bring that experience to the bench.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Anderson, your thoughts on this question, please.
Diversity is one of the hallmarks of this country. And if we don't have diversity on the bench, it's very difficult to move Snohomish County and this country forward. There has never been a Black woman on the Snohomish County bench. And I'm not talking just about Superior Court. I'm talking at the municipal court level, the district court level, the Superior Court level, or the Court of Appeals. When you have the same old and same old thought, how can you really have diversity of thought? Each individual has different lived life experiences. And what I would bring to the bench would not only be my expertise in civil litigation and civil rights and the Constitution, but my lived experience as a business owner as well. So diversity is so, so very important.
Thank you both for those answers. Next question, Ms. Anderson, we start with you. How would you help the public better understand the workings of the court that you serve?
Thank you. I love this question because one of my platform is it's all about education. Once I become the next Snohomish County Superior Court judge, I plan to actually have quarterly meetings with the community, invite them in, figure out what's working, what's not working, educate these individuals, the community, on what is a judge's role, how does it work, what can we do to help the community understand a judge's role? Because a lot of people get really upset when a judge doesn't do X, Y, and Z. And normally it's not a judge's role to do that because it comes from the legislative branch. They're actually making the law and judges are interpreting the law. So we want a law change. It's not up to the judge, it's up to the legislative branch, but it's all about education, education, education. So I plan to not only bring the community in, but actually do outreach to ensure the community knows what a judge's role is. And because like I said, it's all about education.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rivera, your thoughts?
I'm really heartened every day in my job at the courthouse to see the way that the community interacts with the judicial branch of government. We had a group of Everett High School students there. They got to watch part of a jury trial last week. They got to hear from elected judges. They got to hear about jobs in the court system, including court reporters, court clerks, law clerks. The judicial branch, every courtroom proceeding is open to the public. And so it's a matter of just making sure that people feel welcome in coming in and observing. And the legal financial relief day that I mentioned earlier, it was incredibly heartwarming to walk down the hall and see it packed with people who had seen community outreach done to advertise the fact that there was going to be this calendar where if you qualified, you could get legal financial obligations off your past convictions waived. So I am proud of the work that our Snohomish County Superior Court bench does to make sure the community knows we are here and what services we provide.
Thank you so much. Now, next, we want to offer each of you candidates an opportunity to ask a question of each other. The question needs to be related to an answer that you heard in this forum, and each candidate would have 30 seconds to ask a question and then 60 seconds for a response. So, Ms. Rivera, do you have a question for Ms. Anderson?
I was just looking at my notes, and no, I don't have a question for Ms. Anderson. Thank you for the opportunity, though.
Appreciate that. Ms. Anderson, do you have a question for Ms. Rivera based on something you heard in this forum?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Appreciate that you considered that. Well, then we have in fact come to our final question. And the final question is this, and we will start with, in this case, we will start with Ms. Anderson. The final question is, please tell us something about your life experience that might surprise or intrigue voters. Ms. Anderson.
I have so many, but I'll only share one. I was on a bicycle and rode over 200 miles. It was just me, myself, and I did the STP. And so that was really exciting and exhilarating to be out there riding your bike all by yourself and, riding 200 miles. And then finally, I just asked the Snohomish County voters to really look into my background, my education, and what I will bring to Snohomish County, and vote Mary Anderson for judge, the people's voice, because everyone deserves a judge that is experienced, knowledgeable, and well-informed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the final answer to the final question goes to you, Ms. Rivera. Please tell us something about your life experience that might surprise or intrigue voters.
I referenced my brother earlier, so I just want to maybe follow up on that. I was raised in Snohomish County by a single mom, and when our father passed away, my older brother started running away and became involved in drug use. And we dealt with that for a period of 10 years, and it was incredibly heartbreaking until he finally ended up arrested while I was in law school and charged in Snohomish County Superior Court. He ended up joining the Adult Recovery Court program, which was formerly known as drug court, so a therapeutic alternative to prosecution where he was provided drug treatment. And he successfully graduated. And this is a person who, for years, we thought we were going to lose. And it was amazing. And so I just say that in terms of my lived experience. My brother went on to go to college. He's now a substance use disorder provider at Catholic Community Services. And he's speaking at the Adult Recovery Court celebration this Thursday at Snohomish County Superior Court that's open to the community. So I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. The League really appreciates these candidates and thanks them for joining us and for running for office. Now, we encourage you all to explore additional information about these and about all candidates. A recording of this forum and others, including forums that the League held during the primary election, are available on the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County website, YouTube, and podcast channels. And you can find those links at lwvsnoho.org. Vote411.org, also sponsored by the League, is another good source of information. Some important dates coming up. The Snohomish County voter pamphlet will be mailed starting October 7th. That's quite soon. Ballots will be mailed starting October 17th. And the final day for voting, Election Day, is Tuesday, November 5th. Please be a voter. Thank you to our League Candidate Forum team and the Candidate Forum Coalition, and special thanks to Dave Moon and the Sultan School students at TurkPride.tv who made this live stream possible. And of course, thank you all for joining us. This concludes our Candidate Forum.